Hello, hello, everyone. Good afternoon and good morning, depending on your time zone. My name is Jill Austin. I'm a program officer in the Division of Public Programs at the National Endowment for the Humanities, and we're so thrilled to have you all here today. We have a tremendous turnout. We're very excited to speak with you about this program. I am joined today by my coworker in the Division of Public Programs, Kathy Mulvaney, and we also are joined by Jenny Ingram and Daniel Perry from the Office of Grant Management. So we're really looking forward to hearing from them a little bit later in our hour. As we go through the agenda, I will just start right off by saying this is for public impact projects at smaller organizations. The deadline is June 12th. So you all right on time. This meeting is being recorded and transcribed for us. The recording will be posted most likely sometime next week on the program page. And what I will also do now is, before I forget, I'm going to copy the program page information and I'm going to paste it right in the chat. Started. Yes, Caroline, I see you've got a quick question here. The recording is not going to be made available at the end, immediately at the end of the meeting, but it will, as I said, be made within the next few days. We try to get those out as soon as we can, but it may take a couple of days just for that processing. You will also, if you're registered, you will also receive a message saying that the recording is available. Okay, here's our agenda. We're all happy to speak with you about this opportunity. We're briefly going to go through some information about our agency. What is NEH? What are the humanities? What are we talking about when we say the humanities? And then we're going to provide an overview of the Public Impact Projects program, supported activities that you can consider when planning a proposal. What are the application requirements? And we'll tell you a little bit about the review process. And so I will speak first and then turn things over to my colleague Kathy, and then she in turn will turn it over to Jenny and Daniel to talk about the different steps involved for applying, some great budget tips that they have to share with you today, and some overall reminders and good things to know about grant management. Then we will conclude with, again, reminders of those reminders, and then we'll have an opportunity for Q&A. We will save questions for after the presentation, but please feel free to enter those questions in the chat, and hopefully we will anticipate some of those questions that you may have going through as we present. Okay. What is the NEH? We are the National Endowment for the Humanities. We were established in 1965 along with the National Endowment for the Arts, our sister agency. We are an independent federal agency, and we provide grant support for projects that engage humanities ideas and approaches for a variety of different audiences and towards scholarship. In our previous fiscal year of 2023, we are proud to have awarded $180 million in grants. Currently, our chair is Shelley C. Lowe, and she is a member of the Navajo Nation. She is the person who makes all final funding decisions on proposals that come forward before us. And then the question is, what are the humanities? Fields of study that reflect on the meanings of the heritage, traditions, history, and culture of human beings. That's a nice encapsulation of it. Examples of humanities disciplines that we use to support the humanities are different genres or subgenres of history. Art history, for example, ethnomusicology, literary criticism, philosophy, anthropology, and archaeology even. Humanities content, and the reason why this is important is that this is what distinguishes, you can bear this in mind, what distinguishes us from what the NEA funds on the art making side, on the performance side. So for us, as you'll learn, interpretation is at the core of everything that we support. And so the humanities content and the opportunities for analysis with your audiences are central to the awards that would be made in this program. What I can say more about, and you can look at in that notice of funding opportunity through the link that I've posted, is that all successful projects will demonstrate how humanities can matter to your audiences and your communities. For you all, we're speaking to small and mid-sized cultural organizations. The work that you do has resonance on a national level, a state level, a local level. The work you do in your communities not only make your communities interesting, but you contribute to the national culture. You preserve that local history, and you also keep our knowledge going. You keep us all learning. So you all are really are treasures, and this program is aimed to really support uh, what you can do in the humanities to strengthen those relationships with your audiences, as well as the content, that analytical content that you offer. So getting into the scope of all of this, the public impact projects, these are grants with a maximum award of $25,000, and we'll get into more of the details of that a little bit later. But again, we support small and mid-sized organizations and we do have some criteria that we can explain for you. Again, to broaden your audience reach, expand those relationships, maybe even engage with a community within your midst that you really haven't been thinking about, perhaps. There's an opportunity here to really expand and diversify the people who you serve through the content and the history or humanities topics that you offer. You'll hear us say this again and again over the course of this hour. We want you to strengthen your interpretive excellence. This word interpretation, interpretive, interpret, maybe expanding your interpretive capacity or your staff's interpretive capacity, if you will. Increasing those skills for maybe telling stories or teasing out content in maybe innovative or different ways for you all that expand, again, the narratives or the stories that you can tell. Maybe there are some gems that you've really been wanting to talk about, but you never really had the means to take on the challenge of new stories or new angles on stories that may be very familiar to your community audiences. Kathy will also expand on some of these ideas through possible activities a little bit later on. When we say that interpretation is central to the awards that we will make in this program, we also want you to think about these two key questions that are really guiding your project and even guiding the way that you write an application for this program. What are your organization's interpretive humanities needs or programmatic goals? And then how would meeting these goals or needs benefit your public audiences? So interpretation is at the core of all of this, the strengthening, expanding, improving, maybe getting creative with the different ways or angles you can think about how to create new thought-provoking experiences for your public. And when I say interpretation, I also just wanted to draw upon language that we have in that notice of funding opportunity to say that there are many ways that you could interpret the word interpret or the word interpretation, for example. And so for NEH, public interpretation refers to providing audiences with analytical presentations or discussions that explore the historical or cultural significance of a topic, for example. That humanities content and the scholarship based undergirding of these projects, which is another requirement, are central to the awards that we make here. A grounding in that research and an emphasis on interpretation are really how you are presenting or communicating that important history to your visitors. Again, they are core aspects and we cannot emphasize it enough. And that's why you're going to hear that word repeated again and again. You've seen it looking at that that notice of funding opportunity too. And again, this emphasis on analytical approaches and opportunities to get your audiences thinking deeply about a topic or about your history in their community. That's what distinguishes us from the NEA projects that they fund. For example, NEA will support art making or performance-based projects. We deal with we deal with the historical analysis of that. And so while we can't support art making per se or a musical or dance performance, we can support the historical analysis or the discussion of the context around that performance, why it was made, the motivations behind it, perhaps the impact on it. So those are the kinds of things that we're really looking for that undergird this program and can really make a difference for you. For example, if you are at an institution that has a history of slavery in its past, how are you helping audiences to understand that? How do you communicate that history? What methods do you use interpretively to communicate the significance of the legacy, the impact, the kind of staggering importance of that topic? So we can get into that more as we go. A brief program overview here, just to give you some stats. The information you need to know is that the deadline is coming up in June. It's June 12th. That's a Wednesday. And the deadline is a few minutes before midnight Eastern time. So you have to adjust your time zone to bear that in mind. And really it's about getting it submitted through grants.gov a few minutes before midnight. The funding maximum, as I mentioned, is $25,000. The project start dates for this deadline of June 12th would begin between March 1st and May 1st of 2025. So you've got roughly a 2-month window there to think about when you might begin this project. These projects can go for 1 to 2 year periods of time. And if you apply on June 12th, and this is an annual deadline offered once a year every June, you will find out if you've received the award in December, probably mid to late December of 2024 this year. If you do not receive funding, sadly to say, you can still consider reapplying the following June or applying with a brand new application if you prefer, maybe something for a brand new project. Eligibility. This program targets organizations that meet at least two, not all, but at least two of the following criteria. Your annual operating budget is under $1 million. You are in a community with a population of fewer than 300,000 people. It's a little bit loose how we define community. That can be up to you. We're asking people to self-identify here. Your employed staff totals 25 people or fewer, and that can include a mix of full and part-time. You may rely on volunteers or part-time staff for substantial daily operations. And or your core mission is to interpret undertold stories, or your core audience is drawn from underserved populations. And we take our inspiration from the Biden administration's definitions of underserved communities here. I also wanted to say, in terms of eligibility, the basics, you must be a nonprofit. You cannot be an individual, and you must be a nonprofit, a 501c3 that is registered. You can be part of a sub-organization, perhaps, of a state or local municipality or government agency. Maybe it's a county, maybe it's a town. You might be part of an accredited college or university. This is open to HBCUs or HSIs, Hispanic Serving Institutions, or TCUs, tribal colleges or universities as well. In addition, this is available to federally recognized tribal government agencies. I wanted to briefly say that if your organization is a public serving subordinate or a sub-organization of a larger parent entity, such as a small museum at a university or a library or a cultural center, again, operating under a city municipality, and otherwise meets the above criteria, you may still be a good match. You should have your own budget, and you should have an advisory board that is helping you make content decisions and programmatic decisions for your communities. This information is also in the notice of funding opportunity. Okay, that's it for me for now. I will now turn things over to Kathy Mulvaney.
Hey, thanks, Jill. I am Kathy Mulvaney, and I am also a program officer in the Division of Public Programs here at NEH. We do see your questions in the chat, and we will address those once we're done with our program. We may cover some of what you're wondering about in the next part of the program. I would like to address what you can do with these funds. And the first category we have of supported activities is program evaluation. You can use funding to assess your current interpretive programs. I want to stress, as we did in the slide, interpretive programs. This is not to assess how well your fundraising is working. This is for programmatic projects. And so you can use it to assess what you're currently doing. You can use it to evaluate your community reach and audience needs, and it can be all manner of evaluation techniques. It could be front end or formative evaluation for things you plan to do in the future. You may use this money to hire interpretive consultants to help you identify new storylines and frameworks for your collections. Or you could use it to go conduct visits to other sites to learn about best practices in interpretation and public programming. So you can really use this to look at what you're doing now as a jumping off point to future programming, or just to revising what you already have to expand its interpretive power. The second group, oh, can I forward this? Let me see. I can. Excellent. The second group of supported activities is professional development. And this can be professional development for paid staff or volunteers. And it's, again, to enhance your interpretive skills. And you may go to established conferences. There's a whole wide world of those, maybe AAM, AASLH, insert whatever else, historic house museums, conferences, workshops, trainings offered by professional associations. You can also develop an internal training specific to what your organization is doing. So you can go out or bring people in to do these sorts of professional development activities. A third supported group of activities is the planning and implementation of interpretive projects. So you can use it to plan or implement exhibits, tours, or other public programs. That includes community curation or co-creation projects. And then it could, if you bring traveling exhibitions to your site or your institution, you could amplify the messaging on those, the humanities messaging with programs. We won't pay for the exhibition fees or the shipping for that exhibition, but we would pay for associated programming. So you have a lot of different options about what you can use this money for, and we want you to tell us what you need. What would be the best use of your funds to expand your interpretation? And you can combine them. You could bring in a consultant. You could send your staff to a professional development workshop, or you could, all of that could be in support of debuting a new tour or creating a new exhibition or any other public interpretation that you're doing. Again, we are the Division of Public Programs, and as Jill mentioned, we want you to both be doing interpretive work and have an eye towards a public audience. We are here to fund activities that help the American public learn and better understand the humanities. So you have a lot of options about what you can use the money for. We have the requirement for this grant that you have 2 outside individuals on your project. The first is either a scholar or an interpretive consultant. And for us, scholars equals perhaps someone with an advanced degree in the humanities discipline that you're involved in, and or someone who has published writings or on the subject of your project. People always want to know, where do I find this person? You will find this person in your community or nearby, or not, maybe not even nearby. Maybe the expert in what you're talking about is across the country, but you have a community college nearby, undoubtedly. You have a university, you have something which has a scholar who can help you more broadly think about your topic. And so we ask you to have one person who is a scholar. You could also have a consultant. Say what you're looking to do isn't necessarily dig into your collection and identify themes, but you're looking to bring someone in, like an exhibition designer, to help you plan out how to do your exhibition or how to do your public program, or a universal design person. So you could also use the money for a consultant to come in and to do that with you. So we ask you to have one of those, or you could have both, but at least one scholar or one consultant. And then the other person we really need you to have on board is a community advisor. We aren't defining what community advisor means. It could be an elder in your community, a culture bearer, a local historian, a community leader. But for us, we don't want you to be out there planning these things in isolation from the community in which you exist. So we want you to be communicating out to those people so that what you're doing and what you're interpreting is going to have meaning for the people who will be coming, for those audiences. So we do ask you to have at least one community advisor. Last year was our first year offering this grant, and I talked to so many people who this was the easiest part. They all seem to have community advisors already on board. And so you don't have to think hard. You probably have someone already in your organization or working with your organization from your community. You don't have to go find someone new. It's okay if you already have someone to use that person. So again, I want to emphasize that you do need two. You need to identify either a scholar or a consultant, and you need to have a community advisor. And we are looking to know who those people are. And that leads me to discuss the requirements of our application. Our application, as you will see in our notice of funding opportunity, requires you to submit as PDFs a few items. You'll have to submit a narrative where you tell us about your project. You tell us what you're going to use these funds for. You're going to share with us your organizational profile, who you are, what your mission is, what your budget is. So we have a sense. We don't know every organization in the country. We need to know who you are, and our reviewers need to have some context for who you are to make sense of the project you're planning. You also have to give us a work plan. We need to know the time frame of your project and how you're going to do it so that we can judge if it's feasible and it makes sense and is in accordance with the funding you have requested. And then I want to emphasize that we do need biographies of the people involved. We don't need resumes or letters, but we do need biographies of the staff members and any consultants and community advisors that you bring on so we can understand. So don't say we're going to bring on a community advisor. Tell us you're bringing on a community advisor, Kathy Mulvaney, who is an expert in XYZ and can inform us on this. So give us a little bit of that information so we understand why you're bringing on Joe Smith from your community and what that person is going to contribute. So that is broadly the content of section of our application. And we are the federal government, so we like to make you, how do I say this? We make you jump through a few hoops. I know some of you have found navigating applying for a federal grant challenging because we do have a number of registrations that you must do. And you will find when you go to grants.gov, you are going to have to fill out a number of forms, including something called our SF 424, a cover sheet, a site performance location, and a budget. And so I am going to turn it over right now to our colleagues in our Office of Grant Management to help you understand some of what you need to do in order to just simply apply, independent of the narrative and the interpretation and the project itself. This is a lot of what you need to do to be successful in getting your application into the system and applying. So I'm going to turn it over to Jenny Ingram and Daniel Perry to give you some guidance on that and tips. And again, we can address questions that you may have already, problems you may have already encountered once we're done with the whole presentation. So Daniel and Jenny.
Okay, could you go one more slide, I think?
Wait, but yet I have more. I'm sorry. I didn't. Jill was probably sitting there thinking, what is she doing? There are more slides. I'm sorry. I forgot to mention our process of review. Sorry about that. So we have a 3-step process of review that I want to explain to you. We start our review bringing in experts in humanities disciplines and public programming professionals to do an initial review of your application. Then the next step in our review, this is why it takes so long. The next step in our review is there are 26 individuals appointed by the president and confirmed by the Senate that make up our national council, and they review all of your applications. And then the chair of the NEH, Shelley Lowe, is the final decision. And they will be judging your applications on the following review criteria. And this is all in the notice of funding opportunity. So what we're looking for is their thoughts on your audience and institutional impact, your relationship to the humanities, the project feasibility, the personnel involved, the stability of your organization, and then we ask them to give us an overall evaluation of your project. So again, this is all in the notice of funding opportunity, so you can see that. But we really want to know that your project is rooted in interpretation in the humanities for the public and, you know, is a feasible project. And that is what you will be rated on. At the end of our process, whether you're funded or not, we can make available to you those reviewers' comments and ratings, so you have an understanding both if you are funded or not on how you rated, and then if you do eventually want to apply again, it would be helpful to you. Now I'm going to turn it over to Jenny and Daniel. I apologize. I'm going to advance the slide as well. There we go.
Thanks, Kathy. So I am Daniel, that rhymes with flannel, Perry. I am an grant management specialist in the Office of Grant Management. And as Kathy was saying, this is a multi-step process. We know that it can be confusing. We know that it can be complicated. So we do our best to try to simplify it for you. And the 3 things that I'm about to tell you about are for all federal grants. This is not just NEH. These are things that you can use to apply for all federal grants. So when you do them, you don't have to think, oh gosh, this is just for the NEH. It's for anything you want to apply for in the federal government. So the first site is sam.gov. That is the System for Award Management. It is a website where you register your organization to do business with the federal government. So that is anything, grants, cooperative agreements, contracts, any business with the federal government, you have to register with sam.gov. They will assign you a unique entity identifier, a UEI. It's a 12-digit alphanumeric identifier. And then you will use that in all of the government business. And you only have to do this once. You only have to register once, but you do have to renew the registration every year. But it's not a difficult, once you have it, it's very easy to renew, but just set a reminder for yourself. One more important reminder, when you are registering for SAM.gov, when you get the unique entity identifier, the process is not done. You need to keep going with the process until you get that active status and confirmation that you are completely registered. If you already have a SAM unique entity identifier, just make sure that it's still valid and still current. The second site is grants.gov. It is a clearinghouse for federal grant opportunities, and it's the platform where you will submit your application. Now, to go to grants.gov, you do not have to be registered if you just want to look around. You can look for grant opportunities. You can see eligibility for different grant opportunities. They also have a giant library of helpful videos, tips, blog posts, all kinds of helpful information about how to apply for federal grants. If you decide to apply for one, though, you will need to register, and an authorized representative from your organization will need to set up a workspace. A workspace is a virtual co-working space so that whoever the authorized representative designates can work on the grant together. So one person can be doing the budget and one the narrative, or you can proofread, or you can work it out however you want to work out. Both of those things you should do as soon as possible. There's no reason to wait, especially with SAM.gov. If you do not have a registration, you should just go ahead and register. It can take a couple of weeks to get that registration, and then you're done, and you can cross that off your list, and you don't have to worry about it anymore. The third site, login.gov, maybe should have been the first, because to set up SAM.gov or grants.gov, or if you are approved for funding, to sign on to the NEH grant management system, you need a login.gov account. It is just an authentication site that will, when you log on, send you a code. You put the code in, and then you can log on. So you should set that up first, and then you can set up your SAM.gov and your grants.gov. Right? On to Jenny.
Yeah, hi, I'm Jenny Ingram, also from the Office of Grant Management. I wanted to talk a little bit today about indirect costs and then some general budget things. So indirect costs are very, very complex. Indirect costs are expenses that aren't specific to your project. Think overhead costs, things such as utilities, administrative staff, the photocopier. The federal government allows you to charge a portion of your grant as indirect costs. Most of you will not have a negotiated indirect cost rate. And if you know what that is, you already know enough, I think, about indirect costs that you can tune out for a couple minutes. But if you don't have a negotiated indirect cost rate, you can claim indirect costs using what's called the de minimis rate, which is 10% of modified total direct costs. Direct costs are those expenses directly related to your grant project. So think things like salaries, materials and supplies, and travel. In the first round of public impact projects, there was some confusion about indirect costs. So you can see my slash through red circle here. We had a lot of people that took 10%. They thought that 10% indirect costs on an award of $25,000 is $2,500. And that's not the case. $25,000 is the total award amount. That includes both direct and indirect costs. So for a starting point in your budget, you can determine maximum direct costs and indirect costs and work backwards from there. You can find indirect cost calculators online, or you can do a little bit of algebra to figure out what these maximum indirect and direct costs are. So here you can see I've done it. I didn't show my work, but you can see, so $25,000 minus $2,273 would be $22,720. So what I'm saying is the indirect cost and the direct cost, if you add them up together, it comes out to $25,000. And if you took 10% of the direct costs over there, $22,727, you would get $2,273. So I guess what I'm saying is the math works out. Also, not every cost in your budget may be eligible for indirect costs. So just know if you're using these numbers, it's a starting point as you're working on your budget. Modified total direct costs are a very specific thing in the federal government. It's you can find a specific definition online of what they are. It includes salaries and wages, materials and supplies, consultants and contracts, and travel, and a few other things. But it excludes things such as participant support costs, any tuition and scholarships. So it's just something you want to be mindful of, that you're charging direct costs, or you're charging indirect costs on eligible direct costs. And for most of you, I think there would be very few exclusions, if any at all. So the next slide, please. And it is complex, like I said. All right, here we go. So we ask that you submit a budget, an R&R budget form, but also a budget justification. You will itemize and explain your expenses in the budget justification. We want you to show us how you arrived at your calculations. So on the right here, the sample is travel justification that has broken down the travel by all the different components: the flight, the hotels, the meals. It breaks it down by the night, the rate, the mileage. And this one used the GSA rate, which is the federal government rate for meals and incidentals. And that's something you can find online, and they're available by state and sometimes by city when there's very expensive city you're traveling to. Itemize things like salaries and wages by either base salary and percentage of time, or by the hourly wage and number of hours. In general, we ask you to itemize any expense of $1,000 or more. And also, always please make sure that the amounts on your R&R budget form are the same as the amounts on your justification. And it's never a bad idea to have somebody check your math before you submit your application. All right, Daniel.
Wait, can I interrupt real quick, Daniel? I heard someone wrote they can't see the slides. Is that still the case? Are people able to see the slides? Okay. Yes, they can.
Okay, great. So we wanted to just say, because this was something else that happened several times in the first round, food is very difficult to justify on your budget unless somebody is traveling. If they're traveling, they can get meals and incidentals, but unless you are literally in a place where you cannot get food, where there is no way to get you or your participants food, it just can't be justified on a federal budget. And it's probably better to try to figure out another way to pay for that if you do need food. And alcohol is never, ever, 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 ever allowed. So just don't even try. And then one last thing we wanted to talk about was the SF424. Kathy mentioned that earlier. It's a form that you'll fill out when you apply. It's pretty basic. It's got contact information for your organization and for 3 different people who will work, or 3 different roles, I should say, who will work on your project. One is your grants administrator. That is a person who will make fiscal decisions. They will need to make prior approval requests, change requests, things like that. Another is the project director. They will handle the day-to-day programmatic activities that are involved in the project. And then the third is the authorized representative, who is the person in your organization who can authorize actually applying for a federal grant. Now, the grants administrator and the authorized representative can be the same person. That's no problem. The project director and the grants administrator have to be two different people. It's checks and balances, right? One person is planning and doing the activities. The other person is making sure the budget works out and is correct. The trick is, as Jenny has pointed out in her slide, there is a box on the SF 424 that says check here if the project director and the IGA are the same person. Do not check that box. Do not make them the same person. They have to be two people. All right, I think that's it for us.
Okay, Daniel and Jenny, thank you so much for providing that extremely important information to our applicants. We're nearing the end of our presentation here. We just have more reminders of the reminders, as I like to say. So what Jenny and Daniel just said, don't forget to register ASAP for your SAM, your grants.gov, login.gov, all of that good stuff now if you have not done so already. Remember that the optional draft is due again a few minutes before midnight. So that's the evening of Wednesday, May 8th. And I should say that you don't have to provide a full application draft. We often don't have the time to go through every single document. But even if it's just a few pages, even if it's just about getting down your narrative, even if you want just a little bit of feedback on a couple of pages or an idea, we're happy to provide that as much as we can. So you will get a response before the deadline for ways that you can strengthen your application based on our knowledge of all of the inner workings and the requirements of this program. Don't forget as well that all attachment files must be PDF. You'll get a message most likely from grants.gov later on that your application is incomplete because there is an Excel spreadsheet stuck in there or maybe a Word doc. You're going to have to make sure that they're all converted to PDF when you apply. The deadline again is June 12th. That is another Wednesday, and that deadline is late evening on that Wednesday, a few minutes before midnight Eastern time. And when in doubt, call or email a program officer. We're here to give you as much assistance as we can. I'll just do it now. I'm going to go ahead and forward to our final slide, which is our contact information, how to get in touch with us. Again, I pasted the program page at the top of our discussion here today, which links you to the notice of funding opportunity. That is where the recording of this webinar will be posted, most likely sometime next week. Again, you'll receive a notification about that. And then my contact is here, Kathy's, Jenny's, and Daniel's, our main website, NEH.gov, and then our main, for public programs, our main inbox for general inquiries, and this is where you should send the draft to public programs, public PGMS at NEH.gov. Send your drafts to that email address. Do not send any drafts to grants.gov. That is a common misunderstanding. The drafts go to our inbox at NEH.gov. Your applications go to grants.gov when you are ready to submit. Okay, so we're going to start looking over questions. We will address as many of them as we can. I believe some of them may have hopefully been addressed as we have been talking over our presentation. Kathy, I'll turn it over to you to see what leaps out.
Sure. I am going to just go down the chat starting in the beginning, and hopefully we'll get to everything. I know people have asked, yes, this recording will be made available. It will not be made available today. You will get notified since you're already here, you registered, you'll get notified that it's available. And it will be on our main webpage that Jill put into the chat for this grant opportunity. But it does take us a few days. We have to do a few things internally to get it up there. All right. Someone has asked what qualifies someone as a scholar for this grant, and do they need to be a student or would a publisher author count? As we discussed, a scholar is someone who is an expert on your topic. They're generally not students, actually. They're usually you might have someone in your local community, a professor, or someone who has researched your topic. Authors are often part of that. So there's a lot of different people who could qualify as scholars, but students are not generally part of that. We did define what we meant by a small or mid-sized organization. Someone has asked, does this support language immersion schools where we are at the verge of losing our language? So I'm going to say, Paulette, we can definitely talk to you more specifically offline because that's a pretty specific to you question. We don't, in public programs, fund projects in schools for in-school learning. But there may be some sort of way we could work with you, depending on what your goals and aims are. So I would encourage you to directly reach out to either me or Jill, and we can dig into that with you. All right. Funding restrictions. Projects intended exclusively for students in a formal learning environments or that satisfy. This is from our notice of funding application. Someone has copied it. Or satisfy requirements for educational degrees, though projects may include components for use in classrooms. The question is, if our program is intended for interpretation and narratives for youth, and that our program may be used by school groups on field trips, does this qualify our approach? No, it does not. As I said, we won't fund projects that are intended for in-school learning, but we will fund projects intended for school-aged audiences on field trips. We would fund something if you were to go into a school with a project, but we just don't fund in-school curriculum and teaching and learning. All right, we discussed that. Are you able to have a fiscal sponsor partner who is a 501c3 if you are not a for-profit, but not, you are not a not-for-profit, but not a 501c3? So you're talking about fiscal sponsors. Jill, do you want to take this one?
Typing in a reminder. I just repasted the link to the program page for easier access at the bottom here.
Okay.
The deadline is just before midnight for drafts. So 11:59 p.m. Eastern time, and that is a minute before midnight for when the drafts are due. Okay. Let me go back to that question. Kathy, can you refresh my memory?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So they're asking.
I was thinking about that while you were talking.
If you are able to have a fiscal sponsor for this, if you are a not-for-profit, but not a 501c3.
You would really need to demonstrate that both organizations are in active collaboration. You cannot just have a fiscal sponsor to support the kind of application process or the grant management side of things. That organization must be a humanities-based organization in and of itself that can demonstrate in the proposal that it is committed to working with you to really ensure the strength of the humanities content, the goals of the program that you are putting through. And you should explain in your proposal why you need to do this. I will also take advantage of our colleagues' presence and the grant management side of things to see if there is anything inaccurate that I just said there, or if there's anything that you should add to that.
Totally accurate. I might add that if you look at the public humanities projects notice of funding opportunity, there is language in there about substantive involvement and what that means and what the definition is that might be helpful. I know that's another program, but the language itself would be pertinent to fiscal sponsorship.
Thank you.
I have a question or a statement here from someone named Julia Hewitt. It says so a registered 501c3 not with a local government agency is not eligible. I'm not quite sure what you mean there. A registered 501c3 would be eligible. So
I think she's asking, maybe Kathy, is this correct,
Yeah.
Julia, that you were asking if you're required to be part of a local government agency to be eligible, and that is not the case, right?
Yeah. We are a small. Are we eligible? A small museum? Yes. You are a small museum, nonprofit. Yes, you can apply. Okay, question. Can funds be used to support current staff whose responsibility it is to conduct such activities? The answer to that is yes, it can. You can use this to pay for staff directly related to whatever activity you are undertaking. You can't use it just to pay for operating your organization, but as staff responsibilities applied to the project you're being funded for.
And may I add too, so that's what your budget justification is for. And you will go in and give, for example, the base salary for that person and how much time they'll devote to this specific project. And then that's how we'll know that these funds are going toward the proposed project.
That's an excellent point. Thank you, Jenny.
All right, here we go. Jenny, Daniel. Okay, we are a public library, but not, I feel like it's a riddle. We are a public library, but not a state or local government agency. We are our own 501c3 company that is funded with municipal and state money. Do we sound eligible?
I think I can just step in to respond. It depends on your budget. You know, it depends on those review criteria. It depends on what your budget is, the number of your staff. Do you have an advisory board that is working with you again to plan programming, help guide or shape what the content is for any public events that you offer for for your constituency? So we may need a little bit more information there. You are welcome to contact, me or Kathy or Jenny or Daniel, and frankly, any of us.
Can I want to add, and Daniel knows better than me, did you say, Kathy, it was 501c3 and not 501c3?
It says 501(3)(c)(b).
3CB. Maybe I don't.
Yeah, it has to be a 501c3 to apply to be eligible. But
for a nonprofit.
For a nonprofit. Yeah. But it sounds like maybe they could be a municipal part of the city or something like that. But it can only 501c3 is the only category that is eligible.
Wendy, why don't you reach out to us and we'll specifically look into your situation. We have a question. Can a community be defined not geographically or ethnically, such as American libraries or pediatric hospitals? Do you want to tackle that, Jill?
Sure. Yes, it can be. We, again, you need to make your case, make your argument for what you all intend to do. And I think it's one great example that I can give is out of the 28 awards that we made out of our inaugural year in 2023, one great project was awarded to the Oklahoma Museums Association, which is its own nonprofit serving museums, large and small, across the state of Oklahoma. In this case, they themselves, as an organization, that their staff qualified for this program, and then in turn, they are also serving the smaller museums and historic sites across the state. So that is a great example of an organization that is eligible in and of itself, that also is serving in many ways as an umbrella organization, again, to reach deeper into the even smaller communities across that state. So that is a great example of one like that. I would say if you are part of a pediatric hospital group, that might put you at more of a challenge, again, to make that humanities case, but you need to make sure that you meet all of the requirements for a strong, robust humanities project that you would like to engage in among an organization or association of pediatric hospitals, and that you can meet all the requirements for bringing scholars or other consultants on board, and so on and so forth.
Okay. I have some.
Oh, if I could just add,
Yeah.
one other thing before I forget is that on that link to the program page for public impact projects, if you scroll down, you will see a link that will take you to a list of the recent awards, and you are welcome to peruse that. You will see the Oklahoma Museums Award mentioned along with several others, and you can really get a sense of the diversity, the range of organizations and project types that have been proposed out of that first cohort of awards. I encourage you all to look at that.
Great.
Okay, thanks.
So our next question is from Stephen, and I'm sorry if I say this wrong, Langeland. And Stephen, I'm going to encourage you to reach out to us specifically, but the gist of it is that Stephen is a sole researcher on a project at a university. And so when we were talking about universities, yes, universities usually always have more than 25 employees and $1 million budgets. And so we tend, with larger universities, it can be a case-by-case situation. But when we're talking about that, we're talking about an organization that's part of a university, say a university museum that essentially functions as its own separate nonprofit or a center within a university. But Stephen, I would encourage you to reach out to us directly, and we can discuss your situation specifically. Julia wants us to know there is a misplaced colon in the slide, being a 501c3. All right, we will look into that. Is it acceptable to enlist the help of a scholar who is affiliated with our organization? Yes. As I said, well, it depends what you mean by affiliated. You all probably already have community members or scholars that you're working with, or a lot of you have these individuals. You don't have to go beat the bushes to find new scholars or new community members. So if they already have existing relationships, that is fine. We just, as I said, need to know their qualifications. Someone asked the same question. What if we don't, however, we have traditional knowledge? Are they scholars? Yes. So we consider individuals who have unique knowledge, such as elders in an indigenous tribe, or people who have specific knowledge about something to fulfill that role as a scholar as well. Would a storytelling program for children's hospitals qualify for this grant? We can discuss this with you separately, but my first instinct is to say no. Well, let's talk about that separately. Yeah,
I
let's
think your
talk about that
instinct is
separately.
right, but yeah, it's worth discussing separately.
Yeah.
We did receive some inquiries like this last year that were deemed not to really be eligible for the program.
We have an in-house state awarded historian with a PhD, teaches at a local university. Yes. So Pat Kinney, yes, all of those people would qualify as community representatives, advisors, and scholarly advisors. I want to acknowledge that it's 2 o'clock now, and if anyone needs to pop off, that is fine. We will make this available. We are willing to stay here and keep reading through. I don't think we have too much more to go, but Paulette, frustrating that none are considered scholars of who we are. Paulette, if you want to type that again. Oh, there's, I will get back to that.
It looks like more of a comment
Yeah.
than a question. But we do, as you already said, Kathy, we do, we require at least one scholar, but we also require at least one other kind of community historian, which could be an elder, a culture keeper or knowledge keeper, someone who does not necessarily have that kind of formal academic credential. So I hope that that also addressed your question earlier.
If our budget is over $1 million, but we hit the others targets for eligibility, are we still eligible? Yes, you are, as long as you meet 2 of those. Are we notified as we progress through the process? You will be notified if your grant makes it through the process of grants.gov, but we do not notify you during the review process. You will not hear from us after the application deadline in June until you are you will receive notification of whether you received the award or not.
And that would be December of 2024, later at the end of the year.
Okay, this is a great question for Daniel and for Jenny. Is this a reimbursing grant?
So NEH pays in 2 methods. You can either be reimbursed at the end of your project, or you can request payment for immediate cash needs. That would be, say, 3 to 5 days out. So if one of your budget items, for example, is a contract with a consultant and you need to pay the contract, then you can request funds just before you need to pay the contract and they will be released to you. But we do not just issue money up front like your private foundation may do. We don't do that anymore. So either a reimbursement or immediate cash needs.
Thank you. Yes, the UEI does need to be renewed annually. So as Daniel said, please go do that. If you're intending to apply,
Can we clarify? It's the SAM registration that needs to be renewed annually. Once you have your UEI, that is set. But the UEI is only the first step in the process of registering with SAM.gov. But once you're registered, fully registered with SAM.gov, you renew that registration annually.
There's a lot of questions about eligibility. Yes, you can be a standalone 501c3. You do not need to be associated with a university or a government in any way. And then we talked about that. I can see that there's all right, again, another one for Daniel and Jenny. What about food as part of a cultural experience? I think they're referring to your comment, Daniel, that food is hard to justify.
Jenny, you want to take that one?
Well, I think the key is justifying it.
Yeah.
If you can, if you can justify it, if you can make a strong case for why that food should be part of your program and your budget, then more power to you.
Yeah, so there are instances, and another one that we funded last year was for a group in New Orleans that does second line parades that involved some music creation. This is different than food, but it's analogous, where we don't fund the creation of music. Music needed to be played in order to understand the topic and the context. So if in this case food, if your project is about food, then that would be a different something you need to justify, different than saying you're just having a meeting and you want to offer food.
Right. If I could also just step in momentarily to say, I think everything you all have said is great on this. And another way that you can think about it is that if the food is part of that content of the learning experience or humanities experience, then yeah, as Jenny said and Kathy said, more power to you. Try to make the argument. If it's really just about providing the kind of punch and cookies refreshments for your visitors at the gathering, that has never been permissible.
Jill, our next question is the history of the grants awarded, and you have better knowledge. This is our second year, so if you wanted to talk about how much we gave, and I don't know if you have that information at your fingertips.
Sure. We last year we awarded 28 awards, and that was our first year. So our second year, we are hopeful that we're also going to get a strong response from everyone. That funding, which is pretty high for NEH. NEH, as you may well know, is a pretty competitive agency. We received about, I think we received about 111 applications, and we funded 28 of them. So it's hard work, applying for these grants and competing for them. At the beginning of the first page of that notice of funding opportunity, you will see that we have budgeted a certain amount, and we anticipate, the agency anticipates to roughly make a potential 30 awards out of this. And so that's kind of a ballpark planning that the agency anticipates for this coming year. The dollar amount available has not increased or decreased. It's roughly the same. We were aiming for roughly 30 awards that we would have made last year, so we're still at that level. The $25,000 maximum has not changed. That is still the same. The grant does not require a match, to answer your other question. There is no match. If what you want to do in terms of your activities runs higher, or beyond the 25,000, then you can think about cost share. How will you help to fill that in? Do you need to seek, raise funds from elsewhere to make up that difference? But there is no match required for this program at all.
All right, thank you, Jill. The next question is about the budget. And I think what they're asking is the budget submitted as part of the grant application or after the grant is approved? Daniel or Jenny, would you like to talk a little bit about what happens with the budget that is submitted, and then maybe if a grant is approved, what happens?
So first off, to answer the direct question, you do submit a budget as part of your application. The budget and the budget justification are all parts of your application. You are not necessarily reviewed in the peer review on your budget, but if your application is successful, it moves over to us in the Office of Grant Management, and we will work with you on your budget. We will follow up with any questions we might have. We will work with you if you have ineligible costs. We will work with you to make some changes, all those kind of things. But straight out, yes, your budget is part of your application.
Yeah. People get very nervous about budgets, for sure. And the other thing I want to say that follows up on what Jenny said is we understand you're applying well in advance of when the project will start. So we do work with you. The grants office works with you after the fact to really assess where you are. The draft. So as Jill mentioned, NEH staff will read a draft of your application. As she said, we don't need every last thing, but the draft deadline is not the 25th, it's the 8th. So it gives us time to read it and get back to you before, and so you can make any changes. And again, don't send your draft through grants.gov. Please send it to, and I'm going to move our slide back. Please send it through this public programs at NEH.gov. Is there a standard percent for maximum percent for evaluation consultant? I think you're asking how much or what percentage of a grant should be paid to that person. There isn't a standard percent for that. We do like to see more than just the grant going entirely out to one consultant. We do like to see that work with your scholar and your community members, but we don't have a set amount. Did you want to say anything else about that, Jill?
No, I think what you said makes absolute sense, Kathy. No, we don't. We're often asked how much consultants or advisors should be paid. We can't provide any numbers. There really isn't one that we prescribe, but I would agree that we definitely discourage what we think of as a single line item budget, just going to one pure activity. We definitely want to see that the funds, and I would say NEH broadly wants to see that the funds are going toward the bolstering of all of the humanities activities.
So the next question is, we are a 501c3 organization affiliated with a large university. Often the university takes a percentage of our grants. Would that be okay, or would that make us ineligible?
Okay, so that's what we call indirect costs.
Yeah.
And your university has a negotiated indirect cost rate, and it's probably they will want to get those funds. So that does not make you ineligible. That is indirect costs.
Yep. So that is common. It does not make you ineligible. The question is, might this grant be offered for 2025 as well? It is our intent to continue to offer this grant. We always have to put an asterisk on anything, which is to say we are a federal organization funded by the federal government. So it's, it depends on our funding level, but it is our intent to offer it again. If an organization interacts virtually with members of a particular scattered across, would this be suitable as an audience? Oh. No, yes, you can, you define your community and you define your audience. We do not do that for you. And there are projects that would definitely involve people across the United States. So that is fine. As with everything else we've said, you just need to explain it to us and make your case. Please send the link for the grant draft and what time it is due on May 8th. Okay, so it's a little bit looser than applying for the grant itself. I would say midnight on May 8th, you should send your draft along, and more questions around how to define community. And again, we are asking you to define community for us and explain that to us. I don't know the answer to this, and it might be something we need to talk about, but it says our organization is a 501c6, not a C3. Have you guys run across this? I know we've always said 501c3, period, full stop.
That the 501c3 is actually in our founding legislation, so it can only be 501c3.
Okay, thank you.
And a Chamber of Commerce would not be eligible.
Okay. So Caroline is a staff member for a poetry-focused 501c3. Reach out to me or Jill and we'll talk to you. Yes, you could be eligible for programming around interpretation of poetry and poetry history. And oh my, we keep going. Alyssa has from Funding the Future wants to know who to reach out to determine if a program is a good fit. I encourage you and everyone to reach out to us if you have any question about whether it's a fit. We our applications take time and we don't want you doing it if you have better things to do with your time if you're not eligible. So you can reach out to Jill, you can reach out to me, or you can always send an email to that public programs at NEH.gov. It's public PGMS at NEH.gov, and we will answer those questions. Stronger application if match or not necessary. Don't worry about matches. It's absolutely not required in this. It's not even a consideration. How do you prove or confirm that part-time staff and volunteers do the majority of daily operations? So you're going to find with this application, we are asking you to be honest and tell us, and we're not coming to do an audit of your staff. So you determine that and tell us, and we take what you say. When you apply to the federal government, it's a record, and you have to attest that these things are true. So it's up to you to self-identify.
And I would, if I could just, Kathy,
yeah.
I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was just going to say, seeing the other piece of this about the organizational profile, you can insert a brief explanation about that number of staff, or you do have room within your 5-page narrative to also explain the dynamics of your situation.
All right. Now I was trying to look down to see how many more questions we had. Again, I'm going to, as I start reading each and every one of these eligibility and ineligibility questions, I'm going to suggest that you just reach out to us individually and we can really take it case by case for whether you are eligible or not. The draft deadline is May 8th, midnight. And you should send it to our public programs mailbox. Michelle Lynn has asked about another grant program that we offer called the Digital Projects for Public. For the public, it has the same deadline of June 12th as this this grant opportunity, and that draft deadline is actually May 1st. You are correct. We are not trying to confuse anyone. We just wanted to give you all a little more time. The webinar has not been posted yet, to my knowledge.
No, we neither Kathy or I are working on that particular program this season. So we hope that is all posted soon.
Again, there's a couple of questions about eligibility. Please reach out to us directly. There's a question here about upgrading the ability to display the interpretive focus we have. That includes infrastructure like electrical wiring. That is not eligible within this grant. I would refer you back to the interpretive categories that we mentioned, but doing electrical work would not be eligible for this. Should the draft be submitted as a PDF? It doesn't have to be. You can submit it as a Word document or even an email if you just have questions. We don't have specifications for that. And Someone is asking if we have national outreach for a documentary film. I'm not sure what you mean by national outreach. We do have a grant category that we offer in January and August, our media grants that do fund documentary films. So you may want to investigate that. That's on our webpage. If we received funding last year, may we apply again this year? Jill?
Sure.
Okay, I thought
Yeah,
so.
if you've got a different, oh, hi, Hope. If you've got a different, you're coming in with a fresh project, certainly.
Are partnerships with other ethnic, cultural, diverse museums eligible? Yes, they're eligible. Again, you would need to be the applicant and be in charge of the project. So yeah, if you would like more information, please reach out to one of us for help. Sole proprietorship LLCs are not eligible for this opportunity. Can a scholar be our board president who has an advanced humanities degree, or must it be someone outside the organization? Yes, it can be your board president. What if I don't have help from an advisor or community personnel? To be eligible is one thing. To be competitive for a grant for us, we are looking for you to have, as we said, outside advisors or a scholar advisor and a community member. So to be competitive for this grant application, you will want to have those individuals in place. Okay. I'm going to ask Daniel or Jenny. We have discovered we have a UEI number for one of our registered 501c3 entities rendered inactive and are struggling to renew it with SAM.gov. There are several organizations in the same situation, according to the administrator of an unrelated state program. Do you want to talk about resources?
Yeah, sadly, there's nothing we can really help you with on that. You'll just have to keep going back to sam.gov and trying to figure out what the problem is. I know they had a backup for a while. I thought they had taken care of it, but we can't do, there's nothing we can do if your if your UEI is not current, if your sam.gov registration is not current.
Pam has asked, is it a budget for the institution or the project? Pam, it is a budget for the project. We do not need your institutional budget. It is for the project specifically. Mary Elizabeth has asked, could we apply for funds to offer interpretation around the National Parks Blue Way? Mary Elizabeth, please reach out to us. The short answer is yes, but asterisk, it depends. We need to talk to you about possible issues around working with another federal entity. Can I get a list of would a trailer to allow us to move necessary equipment from our interpretive program be a covered expense? The answer to that would be no. One. That is tricky. That is a tricky one. We would have to talk offline.
That would require a lot of justification.
It
A
would.
very, very good justification.
Yeah. Um,
And I guess this is a good, maybe a good window to say if it hasn't been said already, and I don't recall if it has. Maybe you did say this, Jenny, but there are if there is something that folks like Daniel or Jenny are, see as unallowable within your budget, it doesn't necessarily mean it's a deal breaker for the overall award. It's just that that piece of it would need to be struck from the budget. I don't know if I'm saying that somewhat awkwardly.
All right, and then in the RFP there is a list of ineligible costs, and it's actually fairly far down in the.
Section D6.
There we go. Daniel's on it.
D6.
I would say just hit the Control F and put in ineligible costs. It'll come up. And then I'm going to go back to this timeline. I think that shows all the key dates. So the deadline is June 12th. And your project start date should be between March 1st and May 1st. And people often wonder about that. As we said, you will hear in December of 2024 whether you received an offer of an award or not. But then all of this back and forth we're talking to about is why we then can't have projects start until March 1st, because Daniel and Jenny need time to work with all of you and look at your budgets and do your award documents. So your project can start March 1 to May 1 of 2025.
Can
And believe
I want
it
to add,
yeah.
Can I add something too?
Yeah.
So that March 1st is the start of what we call a period of performance. So that is the period, the time period in when you can incur costs on your project, but it's not necessarily the date that you are all boots on the ground tackling your reinterpretation of your museum. There might be a planning period. There might be a ramp up period. So again, that start date is when you are eligible to start incurring costs towards your project. It's not when you need to be out there actually doing the project activities right away.
Thank you.
That's a great point.
And believe it or not, we made it to the end of all the comments.
Perfect timing.
Yeah,
Thank you,
we're
Kathy.
here at 2:30. I did, sort of run past a number of people's comments as I kept going because they seem to be specific to you and your organization's status and whether you're eligible. And so just reach out to us. We will answer. Send us an email. And we will either arrange a time to talk to you or answer you by email. But we are here to help you, and we hope this was a useful exercise. It's helpful to us as well to understand the questions you have, so we can make it better when we do presentations like this in the future. And we'll look for that stray colon out there.
I was looking for it already. Thank you to everyone. Thank you, Kathy, Daniel, Jenny. Thanks, everyone. We even still have 83 people listening on, which is fabulous. Pay attention to your inbox. You should have an email update and or look back to the program page in a few days for that recording. Best of luck, everyone.
Take care. Thank you.
Thank you.